Hey everyone, and welcome to the Cathy Reisenwitz Show. I am still waiting on my guest, Jason King, to join me, but I'm going to go ahead and get started, talk about the news a little bit while I wait for him to come on. It looks like things are really going down in Iraq right now. Shockingly, I can't believe that no one predicted that once we not even leave completely, but draw down the troops in Iraq, that an Al-Qaeda affiliated group would come in and try to take over. This has definitely never happened before in the history of international politics, and it definitely wasn't accurately predicted by a representative from Texas who is small and shrill and often right about things. This is really unfortunate, and even more unfortunate in the way that it was completely and totally predicted. I just can't imagine that there are neocons still saying we need to go back, we need to get even more involved, we need to give the Iraqi soldiers even more arms, which Corey Massimino, I think, just pointed out. I think it's going to be published in the Daily Caller. He just pointed out that there was the city that was taken by the insurgents. The Iraqi soldiers had to leave the city, and they left all the U.S. arms in the city. And so now the Al-Qaeda affiliated group has all the American-bought weapons. This kind of sounds like exactly what happened in Afghanistan, where we come in, we train soldiers, and we arm them, and then the arms end up in the hands of people that we were trying to defeat in the first place. I just am ready for this to be over. This has been so expensive and has taken so many American lives and way, way more Iraqi lives. I really hope that this doesn't go anywhere. Obama's not sounding like he knows what he's doing in the situation. What happened in Libya would indicate that he does not have a good grasp of the concept of blowback and non-intervention. So keeping an eye on that situation. And possibly partially because of that, and partially probably because of the horribly botched and just a bad idea in general Obamacare rollout, it looks like Obama and Bush are equally unpopular, according to a CNN poll. I'm not terribly surprised. I would think that Bush would be in people's minds right now kind of going through an extra dip in popularity as we're seeing the folly of what he started in Iraq kind of come to fruition. But, you know, Obama has a chance here to be the man he said he would be, to not engage in conflicts that are very, very unnecessary and do not have a clear goal, do not have a set end date, do not have clear limits on what we're doing in the foreign policy arena, in foreign interventionism and military engagement. These were all concepts that Obama ran on, that he made very clear were important to him. I mean, this is putting aside the whole transparency issue, which is, of course, inextricably linked with foreign policy, because all of the secret spying is a direct consequence of the Patriot Act, which was a direct consequence of this idea that we need to sacrifice our personal liberties to fight the terrorists. I was really recently disappointed in Senator Rand Paul when he went out of his way to talk about how dangerous the 5 men released from Guantanamo Bay in exchange for Bergdahl, I don't know what his rank was, but the military guy who was in captivity, who was released by, I believe, the Taliban, in exchange for those 5 detainees. I don't know how dangerous they are, but I do know that they're going to be in Qatar for a year and will be highly monitored. And I also know that, in general, it's pretty unlikely that I, as a U.S. citizen, am going to come anywhere near a terrorist. Now, these men might be dangerous in their home countries once they go back eventually after they leave Qatar. But this idea that we need to keep any men detained, and I realize that Rand Paul opposes Gitmo and wants it to be closed, but I guess the issue for me is focus, and focusing on doing the right thing, which is there are only two right things: you release or you try. Well, we're not going to try them, so the right thing to do is to release them. And so to focus on it being wrong for us to release them, instead of focusing on how wrong it is that we detained them and that we continue to detain them, and not only do we detain them without trial, but the U.S. government has been force-feeding the prisoners at Gitmo. This is incredibly dangerous. The fact that we have a government that maintains a prison which violates all conception of due process is far, far more dangerous for me as an individual, as an American citizen, than any terrorist could ever be. And that's just the reality of the situation. My government poses far more of a threat to my health, happiness, freedom, and safety than the terrorists. So I really, Rand Paul is not his daddy, and he still has some years. I hope that he gets on board with making that clear, with making that a priority. I think he will. We'll see. Jason!
Hi, Cathy.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Hello.
Hey, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Everyone, I want to introduce my guest. This is Jason King. Yeah, thank you for coming. He is a co-runner, owner, president of Sean's Outpost, which is the world's first and I believe only primarily Bitcoin-funded homeless shelter, and I think one of the few Bitcoin-funded nonprofits. Jason, tell us a little bit about Sean's Outpost, and I'll say first, I met Jason, I guess, 2 years ago at Jeffrey Tucker's first ever cryptocurrency conference in Atlanta. I had never heard of Sean's Outpost. I wasn't on the Bitcoin Reddit like I should have been. If I had been, I wouldn't have been able to avoid him. But I just heard his story and what he's done, and I was just really moved by it. And so it's my pleasure to have you on, and it's especially good timing that you were able to come on because you're about to have an amazing conference right here where I live. So Jason, tell us a little bit about your nonprofit, what you guys have been up to, and Bitcoin in the Beltway.
Yeah, sure. Sean's Outpost, we're the first cryptocurrency-funded homeless outreach in the world. We were started in Pensacola, Florida, where we fed 85,000 meals to the homeless over the course of the last 14 months. And we've just opened charters in Dallas, Texas, and Toronto and Vancouver, Canada. So we're sort of spreading our mission out, open source style. And then Bitcoin in the Beltway is going to be a wonderful Bitcoin at Liberty themed conference. Here in Washington, D.C., I'm already here on the ground, and it's June 20th through the 22nd at the Renaissance D.C. downtown, and a lot of really great Bitcoin and Liberty speakers are going to be speaking that weekend, and I think it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, who are some of the names that you're excited about being able to host?
Well, Cathy Reisenwitz is going to be there speaking, so obviously that's what I'm most excited about, right?
Right.
Jeffrey Tucker is going to be there, and Jeff Berwick, and Jeff Garzik, which is like the trifecta of Bitcoin Jets, the guys from the MIT Bitcoin project will be there. They're probably who I'm the most excited to meet. I think that's such an innovative idea to give everyone at MIT $100 in Bitcoin and just sort of watch the ecosystem grow there. I think it's just such a wonderful entrepreneurial idea. I can't wait to meet the minds behind that. And just a ton of you. I mean, it's like 53 guests I think we have right now, so it's just going to be insane.
Yeah, that's a lot of people in a short amount of time, and a really great networking opportunity. I'm super excited about meeting some of these people IRL that I know on the internet, so I'm really excited. So you just got done running across America.
I did. I did. I was doing a project called Bitcoin Across America, which was a goal to raise awareness for both Bitcoin and for the homeless epidemic in America. Um, we do have an epidemic. It's, every night there's going to be 1.5 million Americans homeless, and during the course of a year we're going to have 3.6 million people that are going to experience homelessness, and that's 1 in 100 people in the country. It's like the population of Montana, New Hampshire, and the District of Columbia combined are going to be homeless tonight. And people don't realize that the problem's that bad. So, this is America, and we like a spectacle. So I made the decision that in January I was going to physically run from Miami Beach, Florida, to San Francisco, California. And everyone thought I was crazy, and I thought I was crazy, and my wife thought I was crazy. But I did it. It took about 4.5 months. It was 3,237 miles. But I got in this past Saturday, and it was awesome. The sort of closing party was I ran into AT&T Field, which is where the Giants play in San Francisco, and they put it up on the scoreboard, and it was cool. It was a lot of fun, and I met a lot of people and got to have a lot of conversations about both Bitcoin and about how we can maybe do something to start solving this homeless problem in America.
That's awesome. So how do your feet look?
They look like this. They're can I get that? I wear Vibram.
Oh. Did you get a sponsorship from Vibrams? You should have.
What was that?
You should have gotten a sponsorship from Vibrams.
I did. Yeah, they gave me all my footwear. Yeah. I've actually not worn a non-Vibram 5-finger pair of shoes in over 3 years now. I'm their biggest fan. So when I'm like, yeah, hey, I'm gonna run across the country in your shoes, they're like, we got your shoes.
Okay, well, good. Well, it seems like it was pretty successful in raising awareness. I saw you got profiled extensively in Wired. How was that?
That piece was really cool, and it was really interesting too because they came out to Miami, and then I think I lost 72 pounds over the last 4.5 months on the run, and I think they showed up in Miami and were like, this fat boy's gonna die running across the country, so we're not gonna do a piece on you. So they followed me along, like they would check in on me, like they checked in on me in Austin, and I was not dead yet. And then by the time I got to California, they were like, wow, this dude's actually gonna make it. Let's actually do a story. It was cool. It was a lot of fun. No, the people from Wired were great. Daniela Hernandez is actually she profiled Sean's Outpost, and we got like a lot of the homeless guys in Pensacola into Bitcoin early. And so there was a wonderful piece she did last summer about some Bitcoiners that were homeless that actually used Bitcoin to get off the street, and it was great. So we kind of had that in, and then when she heard I was running across the country, she's like, we need to talk about this too. So it was really cool. It was a great piece.
That's awesome. What were some other good hits that you got that you were particularly proud of, or that turned out especially well?
So I was shocked when I actually got to the Pacific Ocean, which was in Santa Monica Pier, California. Just some people were like, yeah, we're gonna get a couple of people together, just so we have some people documenting, that you actually physically crossed the continent. And there was a huge crowd there, and it was just like completely surprising to me. I actually had my earphones in, running in, and Santa Monica Beach is crowded anyway, and so I was just jogging, listening to Mickey Avalon, and then literally looked up, and everybody's clapping, and then I'm like, oh, they're clapping for me, and then so I had to take my earphones out and and say hi to everybody because I just wasn't expecting it, but it was really cool. But the coolest part is just I met hundreds of homeless people, and I got I think I got a really broad look at how homeless is in different areas of the United States. And so in Pensacola, it's really terrible. We have over 1,000 homeless people on the street every night there. and we don't have any homeless shelters. You know, Sean's Outpost runs a 9-acre homeless sanctuary, which is kind of a safe space to be homeless, but still, it's, you know, we don't have beds. It's like a place you can camp out. And that's abysmal to me. I think that that's like terrible. But like I ran through places where they're like, oh, if I could get to Pensacola, that would be fantastic, because it's like so much worse where they are. And it just gave me perspective as to just some, like, basically when you get into the middle of the United States, there's nothing for homeless people at all. It's just like the economic conditions go down, and you know, if you know, there's the economy's terrible someplace, the resources there to support homelessness is going to be, you know, equally as bad. And sort of the irony to it is the hatred towards the homeless people actually goes up in economically depressed areas, because it's like they blame, you know, the homeless for the condition, but I mean that's really like blaming the rats for your filthy frickin' house, you know, and it's really terrible. But I met a lot of wonderful people, and I'm really happy that I did it. And then also just sort of I wasn't really prepared for the isolation of being out on the road. Physically, I was very confident that I could do the run. Mentally, it was an experience I wasn't expecting. I wasn't prepared for the loneliness and just like the isolation, and I felt disconnected from Sean's Outpost, which, you know, ran like clockwork and kept doing our mission, but I wasn't there, and I don't know. I think it's now given me this perspective on something that would be similar to if you were, you know, permanently transient, like if you were a vagrant, and like this is you had this disconnection all the time. So it's something I hadn't really experienced, but I did, and I'm happy I do, because I think I'm a little closer to the people we serve now.
That is absolutely fascinating. I'd never thought about that. I never thought about the isolation aspect. It reminds me of people have talked about the worst part of being homeless, you know, isn't so much the physical aspect, but it's that people don't want to look you in the eye, that people don't want to connect with you, and it makes a lot of sense.
So I did a you know, unofficial, non-scientific experiment, which is most of the run I did in, you know, in like run tech clothes and looked like a runner and had a headphones on. You know, it was very apparent that I was out there with a purpose. And then I got into a couple of areas, and I was like, you know what, let me put jeans on, and I'll put a hoodie on, and I'll throw a backpack on, and then it's like night and day. Like, especially I've got the beard, you know, and it's like night and day. As soon as you throw that backpack on and you got a beard, you get treated differently. I was told I would go into hotels and was told that there were no rooms available, and then when I would call the hotel back and sound very white on the phone, they would tell me there were rooms available. I was told that there was no public restrooms in places that there were public restrooms. I was just, generally it's just, you know, small things like going into a convenience store and being followed around the store because they're afraid that you're going to steal something because, you know, you're this like terrible person. And you know, I had little smidgens of that, and like if that's your life, where, you know, day in and day out you get treated like that, it's just got to impact you psychologically over time. And so I think I talk a lot about that, is that like a lot of people say, well, you know, this huge percentage of homeless people they're homeless because they're mentally ill, and it's like, well, are they homeless because they're mentally ill, or are they mentally ill because they're chronically homeless? You know, because like if you're relatively stable mentally, but you're on the street for 10 months, you're probably not in a very stable mental condition by that point. And you know, I have a support structure, and I had a beautiful tour bus. I had all of this stuff, and it was very difficult for me at times. And if I didn't have that, I can't even imagine what it would be like. So it's just very difficult.
Radley Balco did a really great piece, I think, for the Washington Post recently about the criminalization of poverty. And it's something that I think libertarians absolutely have to make a focus, and is a perfect example of where limited government and individual liberty and social justice intersect. And it reminds me, I mean, there's the actual criminalization of poverty, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, where one little problem just kind of cascades into all these other problems that the state compounds through incarceration and fines and asset forfeiture, harassment, things like that. But then it's kind of a same thing where society kind of punishes and criminalizes poverty. So it's a 1-2 punch where you've got the state and people saying, we expect bad things from you, so we're not going to help you. We're not going to take any risks on you. We're going to isolate you from us, and it's just kind of a self-perpetuating problem. That's fascinating. I had no idea. What a great experiment.
It's also like that by design, which is the realization that I've come to over the last year or so, and I think that's the most disheartening form of it, is that I was a successful entrepreneur, by most accounts, and I never really had any bad interaction with the government until I started feeding homeless people, and I would have never guessed that. You couldn't have told me that. I mean, it seems ridiculous that you would be punished for feeding somebody, but it's that you are pulling the curtain back on the value of the government, and because the government is supposed to be the social safety net, that's what they tell you. They take your money and they're like, look, we're going to help all these people, because you wouldn't help them because you're an asshole, because people are bad, and so we're going to take your money and we're going to go help them. So they take your money, but then they don't actually go help anybody. And then if you're kind of pointing out the fact that they're horribly inefficient at best, and criminal at worst, then that's a direct affront to them, and I wouldn't have guessed that. I really wouldn't have. I gave the government too much credit, and but I don't anymore. I totally see it, and more so, it's exactly like you said. There's direct criminalization. I mean, like in Pensacola, it's illegal to be homeless. It's illegal to sleep outside. In a tent, it's illegal to panhandle. It's illegal to wash yourself in a public place. But we also have bureaucratic cycles that encourage people to become homeless, encourage people that like once you get on the borderline of poverty, make it extremely difficult to get back over that. There's this sort of joke in Pensacola that if you get fined for panhandling and you're homeless, it's a $500 fine. Well, you were panhandling for $1. And then now you have a $500 fine. Well, what happens if you don't pay the fine? Well, you get a bench warrant. So they come and they pick you up, and then that's gonna, it's gonna cost $3,600 minimum for them to pick you up. And then there's gonna be another $7,000 involved in your incarceration for a month. So now, for your dollar panhandling, there's the $500 fine that's now become $10,000 in taxpayer costs, right? Then you get released. Well, then you get let back out. But you're not just broke, you owe all of this money now too, so you're actually less than zero, so you're worse off than you were initially, and you still don't have money to go eat, so you're going to be right back out panhandling again, and then the second time you get caught, you now have the first infraction of panhandling, the infraction of failure to comply, so that's 2, and now you got picked up a third time for panhandling again, that's 3 strikes, now you're going to jail for a year, at least. And then so we're going to, as taxpayers, we're going to cover that cost too. So for $1, we're going to end up on the hook for $40,000, $50,000 in care for this person. Whereas like if we would, like the state of Utah has figured out, it costs about $8,500 to permanently house somebody for the cost of a year, where they actually might have a stable environment, actually might be able to get their shit together and like get a job or figure out a new skill or do something productive. But instead, we've criminalized them. We've created this cycle that, prisons are for the most part for profit on some level. So the incentivization is to keep them full. So if you have if you have this low-hanging fruit of people that are already going back and forth, and they're not disincentivized from they don't get paid differently for getting different classes of people in there. They're going to get paid just as much to arrest me as they are going to get to arrest the homeless guy. Well, they're going to get a lot less pushback from the homeless guy. So just fill them up, and it's terrible. I don't really know another way to put it, but it's terrible.
And you see a similar thing. I'm more familiar with the situation around sex work, where a lot of women will turn to sex work as a kind of transition thing when they need to leave an abusive relationship, or a lot of times an abusive home. And it could be something that they do to make some money to get on their feet, but instead they get arrested and then they get convicted, and that conviction makes them unable to get normal work, and it's just a cycle where then they're back on the streets, like you said, with this big bill.
And I mean, it doesn't even have to start in an abusive relationship. It could be that they chose to go to sex work because they had educational costs or something like that, where they needed this money, and then once they've been arrested that one time,
right?
That's now they're going to have a difficult problem being there, and then they're in the cycle now too. So it's like, it's terrible.
Well, and it's also a class issue, because the women who go into prostitution because it's the best of a good set of options don't usually get arrested. They are usually figured out how to use Craigslist and usually don't get caught. It's the streetwalkers. It's the bottom of the class barrel that gets really harassed and caught up in this cycle. Again, the least pushback. They don't have families that are going to advocate for them. They don't have a community that's going to say, hey, this is wrong. But I could talk to you all day. This is just absolutely fascinating, but I've got to end on time, so I want to give you 4 minutes to kind of tell us how people can get started helping Sean's Outpost, because I think it's doing great work. It's solving kind of related problems. So Sean's Outpost doesn't just use Bitcoin as a funding mechanism, but it also helps solve a problem which contributes to homelessness, which is unbanking and underbanking. I believe 1/4 of Americans had to use alternative financial services last year because banks won't serve them. And so tell people how to get involved in that first, and then remind them when Bitcoin in the Beltway is, and tell them how to buy tickets.
Yeah, so you can donate to Sean's Outpost at Sean's Outpost, SEANS outpost.com/donate. We take pretty much all the major cryptocurrencies, so Bitcoin, Litecoin, the Dogecoin if you're a big Doge fan. If you want to help homeless people, just if you see somebody on the street, don't pass them by. You don't have to give them money, you don't have to give them food, but look them in the eye, and just treat them as a person. Don't be embarrassed. That's the biggest thing, is that homelessness is very hard to look at, because we all know that it really could be us. It's not cute like baby seals, in an oil spill, or stop the dog abuse or anything like that. Like, it's hard because it's us. So like the most powerful thing that you can do is, when you see a homeless person, treat him like a human being. It seems like a really simple thing, but you'd be surprised at how, hey, how are you? Are you doing all right? Like, how far that can actually go in somebody's day. So that would be fantastic if you guys could do that. And you can do that anywhere. You don't have to be in any specific region to do that. Just treat people well. And Bitcoin in the Beltway is it's next Friday. It actually starts 1 week from today. And that's June 20th through 22nd, and bitcoinbeltway.com is where you can get tickets for it. If you get them now, it's cheap. It's like $100 off the door price if you get them now. And if you're a student, we partnered with the Cryptocurrency Collegiate Network, and they're sponsoring for half-price student tickets. So if you're a student of any kind, it's only like $150 for the whole weekend, which is super cheap. And so you can the student discount links on there as well too, so you can get that. Come see the incomparable Cathy Reisenwitz speak, and lots of other awesome people. I think that's about it. I'll have my dog there, so if you've never seen a Shiba Inu in the flesh, my dog will be there. And if you've never heard the mumbling crybaby that Jeffrey Tucker becomes around a Shiba Inu, just I love the dog, you're the cutest little doggy on earth, then it's worth the price of admission just to see Jeffrey Tucker around my dog.
I've spent a decent amount of time with Jeffrey Tucker and have never seen him around your dog, so I'm so excited about this, Jason.
It was great. At the Texas Bitcoin Conference, he was like literally in the middle of an interview, I think on Freedom Phoenix, and I walked by with the dog, and he just completely lost all composure, looked and was like, oh, it's the sweetest little thing. It was just hilarious. Great. Just threw Ernie Hancock off. It was awesome.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you guys for watching. I'll be back on Monday, and I hope to have Jason on again soon as well, and I will see you next week.
All right, take care.